So today we're testing a brand new 2022 YZ250F. We're going to be testing it on a motocross track, obviously. So we're going to be going through turns and jumps, maybe a rut if we can find one. But the main three criteria we're going to be testing it today is on turns, jumps and bush. Seeing if it's worth the money, seeing how versatile this bike is, if it can handle motocross and bush, which I'm hoping it can, because that's what I'm racing this year. See if it's worth your money and seeing if you guys should upgrade. Let's get into it. So we've just pulled in from a few laps, just feeling it out. I'm sure, as you can see by the state of the bike and me, it's a bit wet, there's a bit of water laying around the place, but it's honestly, I think testing a bike on this kind of conditions where it is a bit more slippery is going to accentuate the errors that are in the bike, if there is any, and I'm sure there's a few. I'm finding it's a little stiff sprung for me, so I think that's just in the clickers, but although it is stiff, it's letting me go around some of the flatter turns standing up and just guide the whole bike around and just kind of rear wheel steers the whole way around. And as I come into this rut here, it's a bit stiffer, as I've said, but there's a few square lips and some water laying in the bottom, which creates a super square edge. And as I come in hard on the picks, these brakes are some of the best I've ever ridden with. They're pretty much an oversized rotor compared to its European competitors, so like the KTM 250 and whatnot. Obviously, because the brakes are so good, it's allowing to be a bit forgiving on my entry speed into this rut. I can come in a little too hot sometimes, and it'll still pull me up to this rut, but it's still tracking super well. The suspension's holding up, and yeah, I haven't found any issues with it coming into the rut. As we get into the rut, I'm there. It's not going to go anywhere because it's turning super well on flat, so once it's in a rut, it's turning even better. And as I get to the outside, it's a bit slick, but you just sit down all the way up and it's fine. Some of the best brakes I've ever ridden with, and the most forgiving suspension in turns that I've ever ridden with. I'm really liking it. So obviously we just did the ruts, and I thought just quickly I'd throw in starts, because obviously in motocross that is a crucial part, is getting to that first corner first, hopefully. So jumped on, did a few race starts, and found that, you know, it's tracking super well. Jumped onto the aggressive map to get up this straight and get a bit more top end power. But the only thing that I found that I wasn't loving, because I've been riding European bikes for a while, and that's the cable clutch. In between each start I had to be spinning this thing and getting it adjusted a bit. But apart from that, look, the chassis is not wide at all. I found that it was super comfortable to start in, with your obviously feet between your pegs and your levers, foot levers. It was super comfortable. I could, you know, sit here all day as I am, and it tracks super well. And just, you know, getting that clutch right, it's all technique. But yeah, the bike was super good at this point, and I think we should move on to the jumps now. So in motocross, obviously it's all about turns, and jumps obviously a part of it as well, but usually any bike and anyone can really handle the tabletop. They've got nice soft landings, it's all nice big down ramp. But here I've chosen a single, and we're kind of landing just straight to flat, as similar to we were just down there. Now what that means is when you land on a bike such as this, it tests its bottoming resistance really well. Now I found on this, I haven't felt a steel on steel bottom out, and I'm sure looking at the forks, I'm a little bit off, which is pretty good, which is what I like. I like to have a little bit of over jumping room, which is cool for me. But I'm finding as I come out of here, it's kind of technical because it's off camber and you're turning all the way up the lip. The bike doesn't want to slide out on me. It doesn't want to do like a little bit of a goon whip and then land sideways and high side me into the ground. It's really controlled, and when I'm landing, because of that forgiveness in the suspension and the chassis, it just means that when you land, you're not thinking about, oh, this is going to be a super hard landing smack. you're just like landing and then you just focus on the next obstacle. So a turn, I'm finding going to that next turn, the suspension stays loaded up, it doesn't unload and bounce me all the way in. It obviously rebounds a little bit, but it's staying super loaded all the way as I go into that next turn, and the brakes, it just means they're even better with a lot of weight on them. Positive feedback about all its jumping experience. Obviously tabletops look cool, but they're not technical from a bike perspective or a technique perspective. But a single, when you're landing it, you got to land it smoothly, and I've got complete confidence in this bike that I'm going to be able to do that. So let's move on to onto some tighter stuff and hopefully find some trees that we can put a few tracks around. Got around in the sticks a bit. I got a bit close to some trees, but overall, yeah, it was quite predictable in the bush. I found that, you know, if I messed up a section and hit a little square lip or something a little too fast and got a little bit too far in the air, it wouldn't jump sideways and potentially into a tree like it would on some other bikes. And obviously the track has to come into this a little bit, but it's a little rocky, a bit of a harder base, but a little bit fair bit of clay in it. So I'd say it was pretty good to test on. I obviously mixed it in with the trees, and although it is a motocross bike and I said it was a bit stiff on the motocross track, I found that it was able to just flip-flop side to side, getting in through these tighter sections and avoiding some obstacles pretty well. And I found that on the logs, it's working so well that a few of these like little rocks and little roots and whatnot, it's got that last little plushness in the end of the suspension. It's just absorbing it, and if it's not absorbing it, it's not just completely deflecting my front end off and, you know, into a tree potentially. It's just, I feel it in the forks and it may jump, but it jumps forward, it's predictable, and for that reason it's very safe. And, you know, let's say you deflect off a route as you're going into a corner, because the brakes and the suspension hold up so well, in that sense it's forgiving, and it allows for a little bit of room of error, whether, you know, you're tired or whatever. Yeah, to wrap it all up, if you were to buy a 2022 YZ250F and plan to ride it in the bush, the only thing I would change is soften up the suspension a bit, maybe get a softer map on your phone, but that's free, and chuck an 18-inch rear wheel on. A bit more rubber is definitely going to help. For this year, we are racing motocross and a bit of enduro, so I am actually going to get an 18-inch rear wheel on. We'll set it up for enduro, soften the suspension. But I believe that the chassis and the forks, the whole geometry of the bike feels super good in the trees already, and it is with stiff suspension. So obviously once we soften it up and get it a bit more set up for my weight on and off a motocross track, it's gonna mean that obviously I'm faster. But overall, the whole package that you get as a 2022 YZ250F is super positive, whether you're riding enduro or motocross. I definitely say you want to be definitely going to want a bit of a hard-hitting enduro bike, because that's what it's going to be. You know, there's talk of a few pros running motocross bikes. Like I know Mason Simmons last year was running a MC450, not a Enduro 450. So obviously there's some pro guys running some motocross bikes in the trees, and whether that's something you want to get into, I definitely think we could set this up, and that's what we're doing this year. So yeah, for this whole season ahead, we're going to be riding this bike and have a whole heap of content coming out on it. So if you're keen and you want to see some more, then yeah, subscribe and yeah, let me know what you thought. Just